The private investigator who led the effort to overturn Teina Pora's rape and murder conviction says the case of Gail Maney is fragile, and he's volunteered to take another look at it. Maney was jailed for her part in the 1989 death of Dean Fuller Sands. She's the focus of a new podcast called Gone Fishing, a joint production between RNZ and Stuff. She spent 15 years in prison but is still fighting to prove her innocence. And as Amy Mouse reports, private investigator Tim McKinnel has offered to look into Gail Maney's case.
Gail Maney's conviction was based on the testimony from witnesses who were interviewed 8 or more years after Dean Fuller Sands disappeared. During her trial, the Crown was unable to produce any hard forensic evidence, such as DNA, blood matches or weapons. Fuller Sands' body has never been found. Private investigator Tim McKinnel was a key figure in the quashing of Teina Pora's rape and murder convictions. McKinnel helped set up the New Zealand Public Interest Project about 2 years ago. That's a group of lawyers, investigators and forensic scientists who are trying to plug gaps in the way we deal with miscarriages of justice. McKinnel says, based on the evidence laid out in the podcast, the case appears to be fragile and he says there are immediate red flags. He has also volunteered to look into Maney's case.
My first impression of the case is that it is fragile. In terms of the evidence, there's a lack of corroboration. There's very little in the way of independent evidence. There are concerns around some of the witnesses and their credibility and reliability. There are a number of wavering versions of events before a final version of events is settled on, and we've seen that in cases before where there isn't a clear narrative, and that changes and adjusts over a period of time before there is a settling on a particular version. So those sorts of things are concerning, and I have questions around the way that those statements and that evidence was collected over a period of time.
2 juries found Gail Maney guilty of commissioning a hit on Fuller Sands. The police said she thought Fuller Sands had burgled her home in August 1989, so she asked a nightclub doorman, Stephen Stone, to kill him. The Crown said Stone then killed Fuller Sands in the garage at Maney's home in front of 8 or more witnesses. But Maney says she's innocent. She says she never even met her supposed victim. She believes that he in fact died after being swept off rocks while fishing.
When I was charged with murder on the 3rd of July 1997, that was the first time. That was the first time I'd heard the name Dean Fuller Sands. I've never met Dean, but I guess that in some ways he's kind of become part of my life because I've been accused of his alleged murder.
Former police officer Mark Franklin led the investigation into the death of Dean Fuller Sands. He admits there was a lack of forensic evidence, but he says numerous witnesses gave evidence linking Maney to Fuller Sands and describing the murder at her house.
Dean Fuller Sands wouldn't be dead if it wasn't for Gail Maney. Bottom line. She always denied it, but at the end of the day, you've got to look at the weight of the evidence from not just one witness, but 4, 5, 6 other witnesses, and a lot of peripheral evidence as well.
But McKinnel says there is a growing awareness of the dangers of relying on witness statements alone, especially from witnesses who have been shown to be liars.
Well, I've been doing this work for a little while now, and some of the behaviours and some of the red flags that we've talked about are things that I've seen before in wrongful convictions. And so for those reasons alone, I think you should never walk away from a case and say it's done and dusted, it's not worthy of closer examination. The other issue is that standards have changed a little bit in the last 20 years. So disclosure and the rules around offers, inducements and deals that are made, what is provided to Defence Counsel, those types of things have changed a little bit. And so that gives Gail, I think, some hope that there might be something sitting there that she hasn't seen yet that might be of value to her case.
In the case against Maney and her co-accused Stephen Stone, key witnesses were granted immunity from prosecution in exchange for giving evidence. McKinnel says caution is required when a witness stands to benefit from giving testimony.
That's a fairly substantial carrot for a person who is at risk of being charged of a serious crime. If they're offered immunity, that is an inducement of sorts for them to cooperate. And we mustn't forget the position people are in on occasions when they're dealing with police. If they have done something wrong, either directly related to the crime that's being investigated or in another part of their life, they can be vulnerable in a psychological sense. And when an offer is made and it's a get-out-of-jail-free card, it can be fairly compelling.
Maney, who is currently serving out her sentence on parole, has applied to justice groups like the Innocence Project New Zealand, and she hopes her case will be heard by the Criminal Cases Review Commission, due to be set up by the government mid-2019. McKinnel says she needs to consider what she does next. But regardless, she is in a position where there needs to be fresh evidence or something relatively compelling to advance her appeal. She can also apply for a royal prerogative of mercy.
It's not the end of the road for her. Gail does have options. She just needs to make some informed decisions about what she does next.
Tim McKinnel says he is willing to volunteer his time to look at Gail Maney's case. For Checkpoint, this is Amy Moss.
You can hear the full podcast or check out our special Gone Fishing webpage on the RNZ and Stuff websites.